Hello again. We're now going to talk about one of the challenges that can come up when we're actually doing the review of the waveform and some of the challenges that you can encounter when you're actually setting up the device. Very first thing is the most important, like this little sensor right here is the most important key of on your device, and we need to make sure we protect it. So, and the same thing with all of your connections. We want to be very delicate with all the connections at all the stages so we don't damage something. Also, since this is the most sensitive connection point, if this is the artery that we have on this sensor, we want it to be in the very center. If you can get really close here, we want it to be in the very center of the artery. If it is off to the side, if this puts more pressure on look at the arm right here, more pressure on the bone. If this sensor is pushed more against the bone or more against the tendon, I'll put it on mine because you can see my tendons, more on the bone or more on the tendon, then this is going to give us an inaccurate reading. It may be very close to what we should be getting, but it'll still be inaccurate. So it's important that this is on the very center of the sensor. And there's another, if you cinch this too tight, when I first started doing this, you can back up for a second. When I first started using this device, I sometimes thought the tighter the better. So I'd really snug it down tight. But the problem is that can throw the sensor off as well. So it needs to be snug, more snug than a watch, but not so tight it's cutting off circulation. And you can see from your waveform on the screen. So that's number one, is if it's off center, or you and so if it's off center or too tight or too loose, you're not going to get the right read. So what you want to look, if you can look at the screen again, is how are you going to know that? Well, you've got to look at your waveform during its process. So what we're looking at here is almost a perfect example of a waveform. And on the screen, what you'll see is this bouncing line where you've got a high and then a little divot here and a low and then again. If you're looking at something that's more irregular than that, if you notice that there's a flat part on some of this, or you don't get a waveform that looks like this, your best bet is to readjust the device. Take it off, try again, make sure you've got the right read. And it's just going to be something you have to develop over time. But if you're not looking at this really perfect, this is an atypical waveform, you could have it on wrong. So it's important to go ahead and look at that. If there's any modification from this, take the read again. It's going to take some time to make sure you're doing it right and appropriate read. Do you guys have any questions about that?